Let me be very clear. It brings me no joy to preach from the mountaintops that the ILS is dying. The reality is it is, and the data is there to support it.
At its core, my argument is that the ILSs are not just going to survive, they're actually going to thrive. No one ever talks about Netflix's traffic numbers to their website. How many visitors are going to the website? The website is irrelevant.
I don't want to advertise my properties on CoStar. It is incredibly expensive, and I don't necessarily like them, but I have to be there because that is where renters go. Sam Altman said, I think it's like 800 million users weekly on ChatGPT. Compare that to Zillow and Apartments.com's 30 to 40 million renters a month. People are already living day in and day out in ChatGPT. Search, qualification, and scheduling an appointment. That's a weekend project for OpenAI to do if they wanted to. Weekend project.
Oh, thank you for all the gifts, man.
You've been shaking your head out there.
The query was around, I need an apartment in Austin that's dog friendly, under $2,200 a month and available March 1st. As a consumer, if that data is being scraped by AI, by default, that data or the recommendations are not going to be very useful to me.
Hello everyone, we are live today for the big debate. I'm here with Matt Nieves and Daniel Paulino, and we're gonna have a huge debate here about internet listing systems. Are they gonna be surviving or they're dying, right? So each one of them has a very strong point and very strong opinion on whether they're going to be surviving or not. But I want to start with a quick intro. And Matt, I want to introduce you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just very briefly, my name is Matt Nieves. I've spent the better part of the last 10 years in multifamily tech and marketing across a few really incredible organizations, Zillow Rentals, Elise AI, and Apartment List, to name the big ones. And so I'm coming at this with a little bit of context and unique perspective, and excited to hear more about Daniel's insights.
Thank you. And Daniel, please share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Thank you, Adrian. Good afternoon, everyone. Daniel Paulino. I'm relatively new to the industry compared to Adrian and Matt. I've been in the industry for now 6 years, but I have spent my whole career in marketing, most specifically very focused on digital marketing and digital strategy in various industries. Prior to joining Bozzuto in 2020, I was with Procter & Gamble and Wells Fargo, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth in the marketing world. And as of last year, I've joined Reputation, and I'm leading their real estate practice. So I'm looking forward to today, and regardless of what happens, Matt and I will be friends.
That's correct.
That's exactly what it is, a friendly debate. Although you both have your gloves on, and it's on, right? It's a friendly debate. I want to say hi to all of you that are joining us in very high numbers. If you want to drop your location where you're watching us from and maybe drop a question for our guests, we're going to be trying to stay very structured and kind of like do the questions for the guests first that we have planned on going over. And towards the end, we're gonna keep a time block to go over the top questions from the audience. So please tell us where you're watching from and the questions that you have for the guests or a point that you're trying to make. With this being said, I'm going to go to Matt. And for the sake of time, we're going to have to ask you both. I'm going to have to ask you both to limit, to your interventions to like 2 minutes each, your answers. We're going to have, also follow-ups as needed, but definitely let's try to keep it compact here and cover as much ground as we can because there's a lot of ground to be covered. So Matt, to you, when you say the ILS is dying, what exactly dies? Is it the traffic, the revenue model, the pricing power, or is just the renters just stop going there entirely?
Yeah. And first of all, let me be very clear. It brings me no joy to preach from the mountaintops that the ILS is dying, but the reality is it is, and the data is there to support it anecdotally and both, across the internet by verified sources. But to answer your question, I think it's all of the above. but in sequence. It's and I think traffic is probably the first thing to go. Traffic dies first because renters stop going to apartments.com. They stop going to these other sites when ChatGPT is able to very easily give them, or will be able to very easily give them, 3 verified listings, right? And so think about what ChatGPT is already doing today. It knows everything about you. So it's not just giving you listings that match a checkbox, right, or a basic search inquiry. It's taking into consideration everything it knows about you before it suggests these listings. And so we would expect to see incredibly high conversion rates off of this type of interaction. So traffic first, people stop going to these sites. Then lead volume collapses, right? The old ILS pitch is like, you have to be here because we have the most eyeballs on our listings. Well, what happens when you don't have the most eyeballs on your listings anymore? You stop getting as many contact forms. You stop getting as many engagements there. Once you stop having those, once your lead volume drops, pricing power starts to erode and evaporate because you're not able to charge these premium prices when nobody is clicking and nobody's submitting. And so, again, very logically, revenue starts to follow from that. Again, you're not able to charge, you're not monetizing that. And then from there, it's like relevance is, I think, the final thing to collapse. It's kind of like, I remember driving around and seeing empty Blockbuster stores, to go back to that analogy, with just the sign there and vacant for rent spaces. That's how I see this going down. It's not really theoretical, Adrian. It's ComScore's data shows that there's been this significant dip in ILS traffic. And recently from Q4 25, you see Zillow and apartments.com up in the ether here, but even their traffic has dipped. And, I remember 10 years ago, there was 6, 7, 8 different ILS sources that ComScore was reporting on. There are 4 now. And the other 2, Apartment List and Zumper, are, they've kind of flatlined at the bottom. So we're seeing this happen already, but I would expect that everything kind of dies in sequence.
Now, a follow-up question for you. Is there a version of ILS that actually helps operators, or does it just shift costs somewhere else?
I think that the shift is, and again, this is theoretical now, but I think we see the writing on the wall. The shift is that helps operators is that these leads that would come through from these AI assistants will convert at a significantly higher rate. So yes, there will be a shifting of costs. I imagine that, if I'm Sam Altman or other, CEO or, Google, I'm thinking, how do I monetize this? And I am going to monetize this. And so you can expect to pay probably a premium for these things, but for better results.
Thank you. Now, Daniel, to you. Same question, flip side. When you say ILS survives, what exactly survives? Is it a destination site? Is it the data layer? Is it the conversion engine? Or is it just a brand name on a completely different business rebuilt?
I think it's a combination of all of that, but we'll get more detailed as the debate, as the hour goes on. But at its core, my argument is that the ILSs are not just going to survive, they're actually going to thrive. And when I say they're going to thrive, it's really as a viable business entity. So while there may be merit to traffic decreasing, time on site, etc., at the end of the day, to me, this debate is about, do these organizations survive? And survival really is about financial viability and about bringing results, right? So Matt, was talking about traffic declining at Blockbuster and Netflix taking over. At the end of the day, no one ever talks about Netflix's traffic numbers to their website. How many visitors are going to the website? The website is irrelevant, right? But we all know that Netflix is a thriving business and its subscriber growth continues to grow. And for me, that's really how I think about the ILSs. They have a significant moat, and that moat is data. They have rich data, and we all know that AI thrives on data. The technology of AI is amazing, but without strong data, it's not very useful. And we, as consumers, we're not going to want to rely on data that's scraped off of unstructured and very wildly different websites. Unstructured data is unreliable. It will be outdated very quickly. And so to increase the utility and really the power of AI, the AI chatbots, there needs to be a robust data pipeline feeding information to them that's going to make our experience better. And that pipeline, in my argument, is the ILSs. And lastly, what I would say is that I think there's another element to the ILSs that is going to continue to be a unique point of value for them, for consumers, and that I'm calling that the last mile. At the end of the day, yes, consumers may increasingly go to chatbots to kind of do that top of funnel discovery. It's quite useful because the AI knows a lot about you. But at the end of the day, will you trust its recommendations? Sure, but you're still going to be curious, and you're still going to want to have that immersive experience of looking at the videos, looking at the picture galleries, 3D tours. You're also going to want to schedule a tour. So that last mile is uniquely suited to be delivered to the consumer via the ILS. It's not going to be through the chatbot. I kind of think of the chatbot as the operating system, and the ILS, in this case, in this analogy, the ILS is the app that brings you that utility. So, those of us who, if you love Instagram or TikTok, it lives within your iOS or your Android, but at the end of the day, you're never going to get that experience from that ecosystem like you will from their own app. And in this case, that's why my argument is that the ILSs are going to be that player that's going to provide both rich data and that really strong last mile experience that consumers are always going to expect.
So now the follow-up question for you, Daniel. It seems like the AI wants to play more overall than just like being the delivery vehicle, right? And it's taking over various aspects of businesses. Like there's AI right now building entire scopes of work. Like it's doing incredible things, and this is on a daily basis, right? Not to even get into the Clawbot, the incredible things that it could do, and that's like an entirely different conversation. A follow-up question for you is: can you point to a specific ILS capability that AI can replicate in the next 2 years?
I absolutely. There's one thing that AI doesn't have, and I don't see them having for the foreseeable future, and that's conversion information, right? So when we think about an entire pipeline of leads and of conversion of those leads and bringing in ultimately what this industry cares about, which is leases, the AI can really be taking a lot of queries from the consumer on what their preferences are, what they're looking for, what's important to them. But until and when, and I don't think it's actually going to happen, that's why my argument is that the ILSs are going to continue to win. The ILSs actually have much more than understanding intent. They actually understand who moved in where, and what was the price point, what were they originally looking for, and what did they actually end up settling for, or what did they end up signing up for. So long as ILSs don't have that, they're not going to be able to truly predict what the consumer wants. It knows a lot about you, and we can certainly argue, and I will acknowledge the fact that AI will know much more about each consumer than an ILS ever will. But I don't think that the AI can bring the utility that an ILS can, and the ILS can't bring the utility without the AI. So I think they're a perfect match to complement each other. And so at the end of the day, to answer your question more briefly, Adrian, what I would say is until the ILSs actually have conversion data, which I see significant barriers to them having that, they will not be able to bring the value to consumers because they don't truly know what consumers actually buy. They know what they're thinking, but there's a big disparity between signaled intent and what you actually end up getting. So when you're an ILS, you can model that over many years and thousands, if not millions of prospects. And you understand that there's a high likelihood that, as an example, that family that was looking for a 3-bedroom apartment is willing to settle for a 2-bedroom with a den if it's near a good school district. If you don't have that conversion data, which the AI will not, then you simply cannot provide the level of value without that necessary data that the ILSs have.
One other follow-up question here. You say that the AI will not have that information, but if that information is housed anywhere on the internet, will AI not have the capability to pull it out of there and actually put it in a mix and deliver it?
It's not that AI couldn't process that. It's that there are massive barriers to AI having access to the systems that process all of that. Right now, and I don't see it happening for a long time, and I'll argue that I don't see it happening ever, but we can get into that later in this hour. They don't have access to who actually signed a lease, what the price of the lease, what unit they signed. That's all in the PMS data. ILSs have access to that because they have these deep integrations, but AI does not, right? And so we are still kind of in this newer curve of AI. But if you look at Google has been around for 20 years, and they've been, or more than 20 years, and they've been actually serving ads for the multifamily industry for a long time, but they've never had direct integration into our PMSs. So why would AI all of a sudden have that? I see significant barriers to that happening.
Thank you. So the next round number 2, the 2027 renter journey. Okay, so let's imagine 2027. And it's a shared question for both of you. I'm going to start with you, Matt. Walk me through the renter's journey in 2027. How do you see it step by step? They decided to move. Where do they go first, right? To find the information, the desired information. What data get used? Who ranks their options? And where does the actual conversion happen?
Good question. First of all, so much to unpack in Daniel's answers just now. Maybe we'll get back to them later. But
you feel free to do a rebuttal if you wish.
Great. Let's do a quick rebuttal on that. So I want to talk a little bit more about the moat specifically, because I fundamentally disagree. I do not think that the data whatsoever is a moat for an ILS. It might be a moat that they market themselves on, or that they try to sell themselves to a buyer on, but it is not a legitimate moat. The moat that the ILS has today, that will not be the case soon, is aggregated demand, right? It's the place currently that renters go, so operators have to be there. I cannot tell you how many times over the last 10 years I have heard a director of marketing, a VP of marketing, whoever say, I don't want to advertise my properties on CoStar. It is incredibly expensive and I don't necessarily like them, but I have to be there because that is where renters go. And that gets dismantled the minute that renters stop going there. And we're already seeing that happen, right? We're already seeing a significant amount of users start their search in ChatGPT and identify and learn about new brands and new products via ChatGPT. The moat was never proprietary data. To Daniel's point, the ILS is being able to say, this 3-person family was willing to was actually willing to move from the 3-bedroom to the 2-bedroom, and we have data on that. Maybe I don't know about that. I don't know if I think that they can maybe take some guesses at what's happening behind the scenes, but what the ILSs miss is a critical layer of data, which is the conversation layer of data. The conversation layer of data, both what a renter is saying to an AI assistant and both what they're not saying to an AI assistant. The pauses, the ghosting, the coming back to the conversation and asking different things. That tells a way clearer picture of the renter journey, and gives way better insights into predictive analysis on who's going to rent and when they're going to rent than like session data or the fact that the person submitted the contact form on the 2-bedroom. I think that moat starts to drain, the demand moat starts to drain overnight. Think about the traffic that we already see with ChatGPT. I think just recently Sam Altman said, I think it's like 800 million users weekly on ChatGPT. Compare that to Zillow and Apartments.com's 30 to 40 million renters a month. People are already living day in and day out in ChatGPT in every single thing. It's not just an app. It's not just a website. It lives in your phone and Siri. It lives in all these different devices. It's going to live in whatever device that OpenAI builds, the little pen that they're talking about whenever. It is ingrained in everything. And these other sites are just they're destinations that won't be there. So I think the moat has been demand, and that has been the biggest play. You have to be, we used to tell people at Zillow, you're invisible. Your properties are invisible unless you are advertising on Zillow, and that just won't be the case anymore.
So real quick on that, Matt. So I think, of course, I managed a massive digital marketing budget at one of the top 10 management companies. So we spent millions and millions of dollars a year on the ILSs combined. And of course, I've heard the argument or the conversation, the narrative around, we wish we can reduce our dependence on ILSs. But I think as an industry, the experience layer for ILSs has up until now been the website. And so we think of the ILS as this website that prospects go to. What's happening with AI is it's changing the model and their value prop to be that structured data, that behavioral intelligence that they have, and the modeling behind it. So it's changing how renters, AI is now becoming increasingly that discovery layer, but it's not changing the relevance of that data. So I think for a long time, what's happened is we've actually thought about that business, the ILS business, incorrectly. We thought about it as a website as opposed to an integration, data, and intelligence layer that is very hard to replicate. And I'm arguing that AI cannot replicate that and will not for a long time, for the foreseeable future. So that's one piece that I would come back and say is that we need to think about it differently. Another thing that I'll share real quickly, and we can move on to the next round, is that Zillow shared with me that over the last 12 months, they've had a significant increase in per property average number of leads, even though we can deduce that the traffic to their website has decreased. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you that AI is powerful and that Sam Altman, if he said 800 million users, I believe that. But if you really peel that back, what's happening is AI chatbots have an incremental audience that even companies that are as well known and have such strong brands like Zillow didn't have that entire audience. So the way I'm looking at this is AI has created another door in the building to what is the ILS. So now you have more traffic coming in. So that's pretty hard to refute. So if we're looking at, site traffic's going down, but lead volume is going up. And because we know AI knows so much about you, the lead quality is going up, then it really makes a strong argument for the value prop isn't necessarily your domain. It's the data that powers what you're providing to renters.
It's time gate entry systems were reimagined. Tired of dealing with clickers, key fobs, broken call boxes, and keypads everyone has the code to? Imagine managing multiple properties and realizing your keys are miles away. With Gatewise, access is in your pocket. No codes, no hassle. Residents can let in guests or deliveries from anywhere with a single tap. Gatewise integrates with your property management system, automatically revoking access when residents move out. The Gatewise management portal makes it easy to control every access point remotely from any device. No dedicated computer required, just smart, flexible control at your fingertips. Gatewise also supports self-storage, giving your team cloud-based control over tenant access. Fast, secure, and fully remote. More convenience for your residents, more time and cost savings for your team.
Back to the second question, round two. And I'm loving the fact that we're not gonna get to round 7 for sure. This has been incredible, and I'm not sure if you're actually looking at the screen to see the comments and the questions that are coming in. It's unbelievable, the amount of traffic and the engagement that we have here. So we're definitely on the right track, and I could definitely foresee a round 2 here. But back to the question now, to you, Matt. Walk us through the renter's journey in 2027, step by step. They decided to move. Where do they go first? What data gets used to help them make a decision? Who ranks their options? And where does the actual conversation happen?
before I get into the experience, I think it's important to understand. I think we've been framing this not incorrectly, but we haven't been going deep enough. We've been saying, will AI chatbots kill the ILS? Right? It's not will an AI chatbot. It is will a multi-bazillion-dollar tech company that has dozens and dozens of PhD researchers and dozens of engineers making $500,000, the smartest people in the world allegedly, will that company take down an ILS? And I think the reality is if Sam Altman wanted to put $1 billion into taking out Zillow and apartments.com, et cetera, it would happen. And that experience would look like this in about 5-ish steps. And guess what? Spoiler alert, ILS is not any one of those steps. But step one, think about it. Again, open up your AI assistant of choice, whether that's Gemini or whether that's ChatGPT. And keep in mind that you've been talking to this thing about everything in your life, work and personal, so on and so forth, for however long, right? So it knows the fact that you have broken foot or a damaged foot and, climbing upstairs is difficult for you. It knows that you were asking about recommendations to help you fall asleep because you live next to a busy highway. And so it's keeping all of these things in memory. And so when you go in 2027, a renter simply has to say to ChatGPT, I'm looking for a dog-friendly 2-bedroom apartment under $2,200, let's say downtown Austin, available March 1. Okay. Again, with context, it's looking for these listings that match both what you've said, very binary here, but also with the context of your previous conversations. No filters, no drop downs, no map search, no scrolling through 200 listings across 5 different sites. It's just instant. And step 2, and I think this goes back to the previous question around the data moat. The AI pulls real-time availability on pricing and availability, not from an ILS, from Yardi, from RealPage, from Entrata. There is an new incoming president to Yardi this year. I haven't met the gentleman yet, but if I were him, I would be having conversations with OpenAI, and I'd be saying, hey, I can give you Zillow and apartments.com, all of this revenue on a golden platter, because I will give you a direct feed, real-time feed to the largest property data set in the US, right? And so the OpenAI or Google, they're pulling from PMS data feeds, which is PS, the same place that Zillow and all these other places are pulling from. That is the record of truth, is the PMS. So we get pricing, availability, photos, all that stuff from the PMS. Step 3, again, very difficult to do through an ILS, is additional qualification of the renter conversationally. So understanding the income and budget restraints, pet deposit tolerance, move-in flexibility, could you flex your budget, et cetera. And it's collecting sentiment all along the way, right? Unlike an ILS, to make these very intelligent recommendations. Step 4, again, because in my world, Yardi and OpenAI are integrated. And so renter says, great, can I come in on Friday for 3 p.m. at a tour? API call to Yardi, and we book the appointment at 3 p.m. confirm. The same way that AI assistants do today in the industry would be how OpenAI or Google would work. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Now, I think the rest of the process, the application, the screening, the lease signing, so on and so forth, I don't see that going the way of OpenAI and Google anytime soon. But what I've just described, the search and top of funnel experience, search, qualification, and scheduling an appointment, that's a weekend project for OpenAI to do if they wanted to. Weekend project.
Oh, thank you for all the gifts, man.
You've been shaking your head out there. I'm gonna give you
let's go.
a rebuttal here. Let's hear it.
You gave me so much. Thanks for all those gifts. All right, so let's get into it. So first of all, the question really is around what does the renter journey look like in 2027? And essentially, Matt's preview of that, or Matt's guess on that, is similar to mine, right? The renter is going to open up their favorite chatbot. They're going to type in a natural language query. They're going to get 3 or 4 options ranked, made based on their preferences, based on what the AI knows about them, which, I'll give it to you. It knows a lot about you. It knows things about you that you didn't even necessarily state in the query. I think that's where our paths diverge, right? Because if you're saying the ILS is dead, then essentially what you're arguing, you use the analogy or the example that The query was around, I need an apartment in Austin that's dog friendly, under $2,200 a month and available March 1st. So as a consumer, if that data is being scraped by AI, by default, that data or the recommendations are not going to be very useful to me. Why? Because it could have been scraped 3 months ago. It could have been scraped 2 weeks ago. Regardless, it's not up to the minute information. So what am I going to be missing by scraped data versus if it's relying on data from an ILS fed by an API? What it's going to miss is that if it's taking that from a website, the website may say starting at $2,200, but that may not be the actual price for the type of unit I'm looking for, number one. Number two, even if it does get it from a floor plan page, it might have scraped it a few weeks ago and that floor plan is no longer available at all. It might be a building that's at maximum occupancy. So that's another issue. And the availability, it's telling, I wanted it to tell me something that's available March 1st. That may no longer be the case. So essentially, not only did I not get what I was looking for, but now it eroded my trust. So that's at the core of my argument, is that having that real-time, valuable, standardized data that, by the way, doesn't have to interpret off of 5,000 different types of templated websites that are used in this industry. It can standardize that across, the 100,000 apartment communities in this country, and it can really bring exactly what you need to your recommendations. So that's one of my counters to what Matt just said. He also said that AI can go directly to Yardi and get that information and skip over the ILSs. That argument ignores the fact that ILSs are not just a supply side business, meaning providing data on inventory. They're also a demand side business, which by default, the PMSs are not. They have supply side information. They have data infrastructure on financials. They do not have demand side businesses. They do not have marketplaces. They do not market, and they're not known entities to consumers. And ILSs are. You say to 9 out of 10 renters in this country, you say apartments.com, apartment list, or Zillow, and they're going to know those names. And so there's a lot of trust in that data. It also ignores, like, going directly to a PMS, which I don't foresee happening, ignores that last mile issue that I mentioned previously, which is even if they get the data, let's say they get it directly from the PMS on availability and pricing, where are they going to do the last mile of, I need to see pictures, I want to experience a 3D tour, I want to be able to immerse myself in what it really looks like, what that community really looks like? You're not going to get that from a PMS system. So we need to think about this holistically before we say that the AI is going to kill these businesses, because they're providing value. It's a double-sided equation. If you provide supply side information and demand side, it's really hard to break that up. And that's why Google has never been able to do that. And they've not tried. And yes, I agree. These are trillion-dollar companies that have massive amount of cash and thousands of engineers. Can they do it? Yes. But every company needs to understand what their core competencies are. And their core competencies is building scalable tech. It's not building relationships one PMC by PMC across the country and truly understanding the industry. That's not their core competency. ILSs have been doing that for many years, and that's why Google has never even tried that. They can do it from a tech standpoint, but they don't have the language fluency, the understanding, and the relationships in the industry. And that's not what they want to do, because if they did it in property management, then they would need to do it in hundreds of other industries, and that's just not really how they scale as a company.
Well, Matt, do you want to answer that?
My succinct answer is not yet. Not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. I think, and this death of the ILS, which is inevitable, is not an overnight thing. I don't think that we're going to see OpenAI and Google get into 3D tours and some of these other things overnight. It's going to start with owning search. This idea, though, that we keep going back to around the ILS having like this proprietary data, and you brought up the demand side, that argument would mean that no startup could ever come to market and ever try to compete with Zillow because they don't have the data that they do, right? There's no future for another ILS. There's no future for any type of competitive offering. I would say absolutely not. And again, because of the resources, because of the breadth of what's being done, if this was the direction that these companies choose, and I think at least one of them is very, very seriously about thinking about going down this direction, and already is, that data is you can create that data, right? When we think about 800 million users using this every week, it's not really a far thought to think they could collect enough data to get on par with some of these larger companies very, very quickly. You said it took years and years of collecting this data and formatting, so on and so forth. It would not take years for these companies to do that. They are not reliant, and maybe in the short term, you see, similar to how MapQuest still, powers some results, Yelp still powers some results, but these are irrelevant sites. They are powered by. I could very much envision you doing all of this through the AI assistant and powered by Zillow, but that's a temporary thing. That is a stopgap. That is managing your decline versus, evolving or becoming a new company or competing. It's just not. I don't see it happening, Daniel.
I'll just real quickly, I'll just say that the analogy that these AI companies can build whatever they want and take over, I challenge the premise of that, because Google could do that, Apple could do that in many ways. Apple has distinctly chosen to make their ecosystem something where every developer, every tech company wants to plug into. Apple has never decided that they're going to copy everything that's out there, right? They're not developing social media networks. They've developed, for example, a music streaming service, but it's definitely not the most popular or the best one in the world. They realize we can't compete at a high level with every niche that's out there, even if the niche is large. So let's build a scalable ecosystem where people want to plug in. So their value is having a network, a large viewership, a large audience. I agree with you that AI has a very large audience. It's going to be into the billions on a monthly basis. Their value is going to be, hey, let's make it an ecosystem where all these tech companies want to plug in. We've already seen it with Zillow. I met with folks at Apartment List. They've given me some previews on some really neat things that they're doing to integrate into AI chatbots. And it's next level stuff. The AI companies the chatbot companies are not going to build these discrete products that someone that has the obsession over renter behavior and renter psychology like Apartment List and Zillow do.
This episode is brought to you by AppWork, the maintenance platform built by operators for operators. If your work order system is slowing you down, it's time for a change. AppWork helps you streamline operations, boost tech efficiency, and track everything in real time. Smarter tools, better results. Check them out at appworkco.com. Daniel, a couple of follow-up questions for you here. First of all, with AI collecting data worldwide, I think that there's no system in the world that has a better understanding of human behavior than AI, right? I do understand the niche, the niche opinion, and I think there's a lot to be said of the value of like building in a niche, right? Owning your niche. I'm in agreement that this could be the way it goes. But when it comes to like human behavior, I think AI grows exponentially in understanding us, and basically it's just gonna like take over the world sooner or later. Now, in your version, is the ILS still generating the lead or just validating it in this 2027 next year renter's journey?
There's different ways to answer that, because I think that question can be interpreted differently, right? If the discovery layer is AI, then that's, in my kind of the way I think about it, that's kind of like the analogy to that is the discovery layer we've had for many years, which is Google. If Google is the ecosystem by which you find various renter portals or ILSs or even property websites, what gets the attribution? It's the source that you went to, not the portal that enabled that discovery. So while, you know, AI is an essential discovery layer, I'm not arguing that it's not. I think it's the most fascinating and paradigm shifting thing we're ever going to experience in our lifetimes. At the end of the day, if they're relying on data from the ILSs, the attribution will go to the ILSs. We see that now. Zillow already has a partnership with ChatGPT. You get a ton of information as a consumer through ChatGPT via Zillow's integration through Direct API. Zillow gets the attribution for that. So while they were willing to give up site traffic, meaning you're not going to Zillow.com necessarily, you might be getting there via ChatGPT. What they're not losing is the attribution that they were the source of that lead and that lease that's generated, because that's what gives them that direct line of sight to being able to monetize the data that they have and the brand trust that they have. So I think attribution still stays with the provider of the data. And in this case, my argument is the ILS, right? That's how I think about this. But that doesn't mean that if you're looking at a multi-touch attribution model or an assist model, that doesn't mean that we're negating the fact that the AI chatbots are part of it. But you don't give, like when you're doing organic search, you don't say, oh, this was Google assisted and it came organically through my website. You just say this was an organic, right? We know that the way that they got there was through, you know, SEO that you've done that gave them, you know, a link on Google to your website. You're not giving Google the credit for that. And I think it's the same with AI.
That remains to be seen. But Matt, please.
Yes, one quick counter, Mr. Paulino. Two quick counters, actually. We are living in different, you know, future worlds, right? You and I. And I think in my future world, I see ChatGPT and Google Gemini as syndication, being able to add those to your syndicator, whether it's Rent Cafe or whatever, and they become sources. They become sources because, again, in my world, they're pulling this data directly from the PMS and not from the ILSs, and so therefore they would be attributed with they would get the attribution, right? Again, that's just want to clarify. That's my point. You brought up though an interesting thing around Zillow and the integration, and I have thoughts on this too. You know, Zillow did launch inside ChatGPT, and I thought that was awesome. I thought it was a really cool kind of first-ish to market move in doing that. But it really makes you think, like, if Zillow is the most recognized real estate brand on the planet, period, as far as I'm concerned, and I think there's plenty of data to support that. But if they are building something within someone else's platform, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about where discovery is headed towards in our industry. And so my read is that Zillow isn't building a moat around its destination, around its platform, around its search. It's kind of abandoning that. At least that move would indicate, and that's my read, that they would be abandoning that. And we've kind of like seen that before, right? Like Amazon didn't kill retail by being slightly better at retail or knowing the consumer better. It changed where shopping actually happens. And that is what's happening like today as we speak across 800 million users, et cetera, et cetera. AI isn't going to be slightly better than an ILS. It's going to change where everybody goes to. And so when discovery moves, when the renter who's getting that information from ChatGPT, who's getting it from Yardi, when they're having that discovery experience in their AI assistant, everything I believe kind of just moves downstream from there, right? Traffic, leads, pricing power, revenue, it all goes.
Yeah, but one of the things that we have to talk about here is that these ecosystems, right? I think of Google as an ecosystem. I think of the AI, the various AI chatbots as ecosystems. They're going to integrate with the ILSs or the marketplaces, if you want to call them that, data providers that have an audience. Yardi and RealPage do not have consumer audiences. So they can't, like, the audience doesn't value, like, okay, all of a sudden RealPage or Yardi or whoever or Entrada starts to say that, hey, we provide this data. Like the consumer doesn't understand that. There is a huge amount, we know this from many different industries over decades, that there's a huge value to brand equity. And so long as you're an ILS and your data is now your currency, which allows you to create a viable and financially sustainable business, you're gonna do advertising. You're going to create equity in your brand. You're going to focus on releasing new products and improving the user experience for the data that you provide, and ultimately also the ecosystem, the experience, the digital experience that you provide. Because as I keep arguing, AI is not going to provide you that last mile experience where you're viewing the galleries, where it's an operating system. It's a shell. It's not the end point to providing you the experience. I don't think anybody who's listening in today would agree or argue that all of a sudden AI, you won't be using Instagram in the future. You're just going to go and see your feeds right in AI, and AI is going to give you that full experience. There may be some kind of integration to see something at a very high level, but at the end of the day, that full immersive experience is going to happen on Instagram's app or on TikTok's app. And so I just don't see that brand equity going away. Those brands are trusted by consumers. Consumers know them, they've used them, and there's a lot of value in that. And one other thing I want to mention is that these AI companies, do they really want to deal with the mess and the quagmire that is fair housing and all the regulations, fee transparency, and trying to navigate all of that? These ILSs have been spending years and years and vast amount of resources ensuring that they're compliant, that they're up to the standards on all the different states that are on a rolling basis, rolling out new requirements for fee transparency. There's no way that AI companies are all of a sudden going to scale up to start caring about that. They want to scale their businesses quickly. When you raise the amount of money that these companies are raising at the multiples that they're raising, scaling is what matters, not starting to build deeper trenches into one specific industry. So the way that they're going to scale is via partnerships, and the partnerships are going to be via companies that have expertise and have already proven that expertise and have audiences in various industries. And that's why my argument is that ILSs will continue to be that player in multifamily.
German, I want to move on to the next round. Where does the truth lays? And this is a question for you both, right? It's a practical question that nobody has solved yet, or please, tell me if they did. Where does the AI assistant get the truth? Like real-time availability, actual pricing, fees, amenity details, and who's the source of record? So Matt, I'm gonna start with you.
Yeah, I will reiterate, and I feel very strongly about this. And again, if you're already in Trada RealPage, you're not thinking about this, please contact me, because you should be thinking about this. But it's the, whether you like it or not, it's the PMS that has always been the record of truth. And you can say that there's proprietary data within Zillow and Apartments.com, and they do. They have they have their own data sets, but they are pulling pricing, availability, amenity information, etc., directly from the PMS. And so when you envision a world where the middleman is cut out and you're no longer buying leads from this, lead marketplace, why would you go to that place for the data when you can get it in a fairly raw format from the source of truth, and you can structure it and manipulate it and serve it up the way that you want to, not the way that Zillow's data philosophy or structure has been built, or Apartments.com. You have access to fairly raw data that and I'm, again, no disrespect to any of these companies, but if I had to choose one company to give my data to and use it correctly and to deliver the best experience, I would probably give it to the company like Google or OpenAI that sit on data all day long. And I mean, this is their business. It comes from there. And again, that hasn't happened today, but I would be shocked if it doesn't happen at some point.
Same question for you, Daniel.
Well, I think I've mentioned multiple times already why I think the PMSs won't get into that world, but let's humor Matt and say that they did.
Humor me.
At the end of the day, keep in mind that the value that the ILSs provide in the user experience is that full immersive end-to-end experience, which means all the media, all the, of course, the pictures, the 3D tours, etc. That's not something that the PMSs are going to be serving up to AI. So we need to think about user experience. The user is always going to be what matters the most in any industry. So the companies behind the data can try to do jockey and do whatever they want to do, but at the end of the day, the dollar is with the user. And if I'm one of, leading one of the AI companies, I'm going to figure out how to provide the very best experience to the consumer. And right now, the only pathway to providing them that the best experience is going to the ILSs. It's not going to go through this uncharted territory of going to PMSs and then getting some data that I need from them, but then still not being able to provide the end consumer with the experience that they need. So got to think about, there's a lot of market forces at play here, and there's a lot of reason for them to try to figure out what's the shortest path to providing the best experience, and that's the ILSs.
German, I think I want to switch to questions from our audience, which we had a ton of. Like really, we're approaching the top of the hour. We have like 10 minutes left, and I'm gonna kind of like go backwards with one of the latest ones that came in. And there's a question from Michael Zimmerman, and he wants to ask you both: how do you justify continuing to pay for ILS to an operator who isn't seeing it generate qualified traffic or leads? Matt?
I don't know. How do you justify that? If it were me, I would not be. I think, the reality is today, the ILS still is the destination point, and that still is the most eyeballs on your properties. And you kind of, it's pay to play, right? For better or for worse. I do think that AI deeply disrupts that whole model. Today, though, I think you kind of, whether you can justify it or not, whether you kind of have to do it. I think that if I were an operator right now, and this is not what you're asking, but I'm going to give you my unsolicited advice. If I were spending money with ILSs and I was not seeing the desired outcomes, I would be looking to potentially do an A/B test and to run a little pilot internally on optimizing my sites to be surfaced within AI results and to see where that goes. Give yourself a little preview of what's to come, and Daniel, it will come. But I don't know. I don't think that you can really justify it outside of like, you have to be there next to your competition who's going to pay to be there. It's not a great answer, but it's the truth.
How about you, Daniel?
I mean, this is a very common question. Michael, who asked, I'm not sure what company you're with, what's the structure, if you're with the PMC, and if so, are you on the third party side or owner manager side? But one of the things that I saw, and I worked at a large third-party management company, is that even when we gave recommendations to reduce ILS spend, not necessarily cut it completely, is that ownership is hesitant, no matter how much data we provided. And so I think that's a factor that we need to think about, is like we may at sometimes know the answers. Like, there's a lot of communities where the ROI, it's black and white, it's there. And other ones where it's questionable, and we propose to ownership, hey, here's how we're going to test this. We want to reduce for this period of time. Here's the metrics that we're going to show you, and what our methodology is. And ownership says no. And at the same time, they're telling us to go and cut other costs. So it's not a simple linear way of getting there. But at its highest level, just what I would say from a strategy, a digital marketing strategy standpoint, is no, you don't justify it, but you also need to look deeper than just the level of reporting that may or may not give you full attribution. So it's a little bit more than we can get into today, but there's various methods. And then, Michael, if you want to contact me, on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. But there's a lot of ways of doing this in a way that's a controlled way to understand the signals and try to get the noise away from the signals to understand if there's really value. So I want to be clear that while I've been debating today that I think that not only will the ILSs survive, but they will thrive, that doesn't mean that carte blanche against all your communities, you should always be spending at the highest level. That is not what I'm arguing whatsoever.
There's a question that came in previously for Matt, and it comes from Mike Welling. When you were arguing that the AI is gonna become, this huge engine that's gonna basically destroy by the ILSs. So he's asking, why hasn't Google already gone down the path you're describing? They already have the biggest ILS, Google Business, and a massive LLM, Gemini, yet they're barely pursuing deeper ways to get into our business.
Mike, hello. How are you? We haven't talked in many years, but I don't know that I have like the exact answer because I don't work at Google. Here is my hypothesis, and this is both just me internalizing things that I read, but also talking to people that work at Google. One, I think that they have over the years made slow, intentional steps into this space, and we are seeing it now more than ever. I will tell you that it was definitely a topic of conversation years ago that at Zillow we would say, oh, apartments.com is not our real competitor. Apartment List is not our competitor. Google is our real competitor. Google is who we have to watch out for. And I think, AI is permeating everything. And obviously, real estate is this massive category and industry that must be conquered, right? And I think that having their tentacles and integrations into multifamily and into the ILS space is just a part of a potentially larger real estate play, and a larger play is to be kind of first into real estate from an AI standpoint. I think that, again, will it happen overnight, and will we see Zillow in 6 months or Google in 6 months be the dominant player? Probably not, but I kind of see the writing on the wall, and I think it's about control. I think it's about, again, we see these companies competing on philosophy at this point, right? OpenAI, Apple, Google, Meta, competing on philosophies for the future, and I think being able to own the real estate category, have a significant stake in it is a big part.
There's a question that just came in from Tamala. Hi, Tamala. And she's asking you both, how far in the future do you see ILSs and or PMSs creating strategies for the direct talk to property experiences where a renter uses their own AI agent for transactional tasks like search, identifying, set appointment, tour, apply, pay? Create a new ecosystem, not a standalone marketing asset. Monitoring for data drift, hallucinations, AI governments, guardrails and clauses, continuous learning, and so much more. Daniel.
I think we're a couple of years from that. The industry has been using their own AI agents now to nurture leads for probably 6-7 years, right? I know I was an early adopter of Elise in 2020 when it was a much smaller company, but it's ubiquitous now. There's so many different players in that space for AI lead nurturing. So essentially the AI lead nurturing has taken over a lot of what leasing agents used to do. And so I think Tamala's question is, when will the renter's AI interact with the property management company's AI? I believe that's what she's asking. We're already seeing over the last several months just proliferation of, oh wow, something popped up on the screen here that I've not seen before, but proliferation of AI agents.
Question, it was a long question, so I put her up on the screen to maybe make it
so
a little.
Claude has been a big topic of conversation recently with their co-work and coding capabilities. Essentially, you can use these agents to go out and do things for you. So how far are we from this? I don't think we're very far, but I do think that there's going to need to be maybe not a completely universal, but there's going to need to be more of a standardized way of these agents interfacing with each other. I haven't seen any kind of standardized way of that happening just yet, but I don't think we're very far from it. At the end of the day, these companies are building tools very quickly, and I think that that's something that we will see in the next 18 to 24 months.
Same question for you, Matt.
Yeah, I would generally agree, if not, faster, just because I believe that this is really on the horizon. But I agree. It's not far away, and I will go back to this point. And Daniel got a little chuckle out of this, but for an open AI, this is a weekend project. It really is. Like if you already were to say, "Here's my API today," because that's the route I'm choosing to take, they could spin this up relatively quickly, and they could scale relatively quickly. I think that is definitely the direction in which this is going, in which your personal assistant, not just within real estate, across everything, across e-commerce, across real estate, across any human-to-human interaction or B2C interaction, you will have these agents that can carry out these tasks for you, whether it is, I need these items from Instacart to be delivered to me, or I need these items from Amazon delivered to me, or I'm looking for an apartment and I want to schedule a tour. You will have AI agents within 12 to 24 months tops that are doing these tasks for you. I do believe that those AI, they will be personal assistants provided by like an OpenAI or Gemini, not an Elise or something like that. Yeah, it's close.
I couldn't think of a better way to close this conversation than in agreement, right? So I've got you both to, I got you to agree on something. German, incredibly excited that we had this opportunity to do this together. Looks like we barely scratched the surface on this. I probably have like 80% more that I wanted to cover. I'd love to invite you both for a second round here. Incredible interactions from the audience. We could have built a show just on audience questions. So I want to thank you all for being here in very high numbers. And we know that there were other events in the industry happening at the same time. So I'm very, very much appreciative of this. We'll love to see you on round two. But before we say see you next time, I want to give you a final word. So Daniel, I'm going to start with you.
Final words?
Yes, sir.
I would say we're in the most exciting time that I can think of. I love technology. I love consumer behavior. Marketing is something that I've done for my whole career. I can't think of a more exciting time. Things are moving quick, but there is so much opportunity. And I think if the audience and your coworkers, your colleagues, and your executives who were not able to attend, I really encourage people to look at this as the greatest moment in history for opportunity. When there's fear, when there's uncertainty, it creates so much opportunity for those who are willing to take risks, for those who are willing to explore, to try new things, and to tinker. We should be doing that. If we focus on bringing in the best results for our companies and providing the right experience for our residents and our prospects, we should be dedicating our time and our efforts to experimenting and trying new tools, not to letting only the most capable or largest companies do it. I see that happening frequently, and I think it's a mistake. There is so many times in even in recent history that when technology is changing quickly, it creates moments or times where you can get results in ways that the rest of the market hasn't caught up yet. And I like to be on the leading edge. I would recommend more of you to do that. It doesn't have to be complicated. I know there's so much noise out there, but really try to focus in on a couple of key areas. My biggest recommendation is not to try to do everything, but look at your business. Where are the pain points? Isolate those pain points, and then look for technologies and solutions to address those. Don't be waiting for salespeople to call you telling you they have the next biggest thing, because you're always going to be running around with no direction and the executives at your company will lose faith in what's happening, and they're going to be really scared. If you really just look in, drown out the noise, look at what your priorities are as a business and where you're hurting, then figure out how to bring in solutions to address those problems. That's the number one recommendation that I would have.
Matt, final word?
Final words. First of all, this has been fantastic. Thank you both thanks Adrian for facilitating. Thank you, Daniel, for participating. Thanks for everybody that signed in. In prepping for this, I was thinking a lot about when I first got into the industry, and I remember it really wasn't that long ago where people were spending $20,000 to be on the front page of Apartment Guide, right? Or I would talk to directors of marketing or property managers who would say, you probably won't believe this, but my best marketing source is a pull tab sheet in the local diner. Things have changed a lot, and they changed rapidly, but you have to remember that Zillow is a 20-year-old company. Apartments.com is even older, I think 1997, maybe earlier. Things change, and AI is we've never seen anything like this in our lives, in our lifetimes. We've never seen this rapid acceleration and adoption of technology. This change, this shift in search and discovery and engagement is happening. Embrace it. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to embrace the change. This is happening, and I've been preaching this from the mountaintops since 2020 when I started at Elise. This is coming, and it really is already here. The writing is on the wall, and I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. I think if you are an ILS company joining in, you shouldn't be afraid either, because there is time to adapt. There is time to fundamentally change what you're doing, but you will not be selling leads to property management companies in the very near future. I can almost guarantee you that. If you are, you're going to be this vestigial force like the Yellow Pages that, is just there because it's there, because people are attached to nostalgia. And I couldn't agree more with Daniel that, with this change comes this massive opportunity and excitement. I am so encouraged and excited for the future of our industry and the way that AI will shape that. But please, to Daniel's point, get in front of it. Don't be reactive to this. Don't be the person that's finding out about the latest tools when it's too late. You educate yourselves, educate your organizations, become fluent in what's happening, not just the surface level. Wow, I can ask questions to ChatGPT and it gives me answers immediately. Dive in, challenge yourself to dig deeper and explore the full capabilities of what this technology can do. And I promise you, if you haven't already, you'll kind of see where my head is going with all of this and why I feel like this is inevitable. Once you build your first app on your own without any coding experience in Claude or Lovable, you will see, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Anyway, it's incredibly exciting. It's a great time to be in the industry, to be in tech in this industry, be an operator in this industry. And I imagine that we will have many more philosophical debates around how and where and when AI kind of jumps into our industry. But super excited.
Gentlemen, thank you both once again. I would love for us to consider a second round here, or a second podcast, because it's just like so much to cover. And thank you all for joining us. This was all the time we had today. See you on the next one. Take care. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.